Captain Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the observation deck's reinforced viewport, watching as the impossible planet grew larger on their approach. Kepler 442b hung in space like a fever dream made manifest, its surface a constantly shifting tapestry of colors that shouldn't exist according to every known law of physics. Where normal planets displayed predictable patterns of land and water, this world showed spirals of silver light that moved like living things, oceans that flickered between states of matter, and continents that seemed to fold in on themselves before reforming in completely different configurations. Captain, we're receiving another warning transmission from the Galactic Council station at the system's edge, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen from her position at the communications console. Her voice carried the tension that had plagued the crew of the UES Perseverance for the past 72 hours, ever since they'd entered the Kepler 442 system against direct orders from both Earth Command and the Council itself. "Play it," Elena said, not taking her eyes off the planet. She'd heard 17 such warnings already, each more threatening than the last. The Council's patience with human stubbornness was wearing thin, but Elena had long since passed the point of caring about galactic politics. The familiar voice of Councillor Zethkri filled the bridge, its translated tones carrying the condescending authority that Elena had grown to despise during her years serving in mixed-species operations. "Attention, human vessel. You are in violation of Galactic Edict 2847, Alpha. Kepler 442b is classified as a Category Omega anomaly. No sentient life is permitted within 10 astronomical units of this system. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences of your actions." "Same message, different day," muttered Chief Engineer Marcus Thompson from his station. The grizzled veteran had been Elena's friend since their academy days, and she could hear the mix of excitement and apprehension in his voice. Marcus lived for the kind of challenges that made other engineers resign their commissions and take up quiet lives on agricultural worlds. "What's our status on the gravitational anomalies?" Elena asked, turning to address the ship's science officer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. The young xenophysicist had been the driving force behind their unauthorized mission, her research into the Council's classified files revealing hints of discoveries so profound that they'd convinced Elena to risk her career, her crew, and possibly her species standing in the galactic community. "Still completely off the charts," Yuki replied, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed readings so contradictory they would have been dismissed as equipment failure under any other circumstances.
The planet's gravitational field is simultaneously stronger and weaker than it should be, depending on which instruments we use to measure it.
"It's like the laws of physics are taking turns being in effect." Elena nodded grimly. They'd discovered the gravitational impossibilities 3 days ago, when their approach trajectory had suddenly shifted without warning. Instead of the predictable orbital mechanics that governed every other celestial body in known space, Kepler 442b seemed to exist in its own pocket of reality where cause and effect operated according to rules that no one had ever written down. "The temporal distortions are getting worse too," added Dr. Finn. James Wright, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist. Wright was old enough to remember first contact with the Council races, and Elena trusted his instincts about alien phenomena more than most people trusted their own eyes. "My chronometers show that we've been in this system for anywhere between 6 hours and 3 weeks, depending on which one I check." "That's not possible," Sarah said, though her voice lacked conviction. After everything they'd witnessed in the past few days, the word impossible was starting to lose all meaning aboard the Perseverance. "According to the Council, none of this should be possible," Elena replied. "Which is exactly why we need to be here." She moved away from the viewport and took her place in the captain's chair, a gesture that always helped her think more clearly when facing difficult decisions. The chair had been her command post during the Rigel incident, where human ingenuity had solved a crisis that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds for decades. It had supported her during the negotiations at Alpha Centauri, where she'd secured humanity's first major trade agreement with the Council races. Now it would have to see her through whatever lay ahead on the most mysterious planet ever discovered. "Yuki, what do we know about the planet's surface?" she asked. The science officer called up a series of sensor readings that made no sense according to conventional understanding. The surface temperature varies between absolute zero and several thousand degrees Celsius, often within meters of each other. The atmospheric composition changes constantly, cycling through everything from pure oxygen to noble gases that shouldn't exist in nature. "And the land masses—" She paused, shaking her head in disbelief.
"Captain, the continents are moving."
Not drifting like normal tectonic activity, but actually relocating themselves in real time. "Any signs of life?" Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. That's where it gets really strange, Wright interjected, pulling up his own set of readings. Every biosensor we have is screaming that the planet is both completely sterile and absolutely teeming with life forms that register as impossible. We're detecting cellular activity that operates without DNA, energy signatures that suggest photosynthesis using light frequencies that don't exist, and something that might be civilization-level intelligence spread across the entire planetary surface. Elena felt the familiar thrill that came with standing at the edge of a discovery that could change everything. It was the same sensation she'd experienced as a young officer when humanity had first learned they weren't alone in the universe, the same electric anticipation that had driven her species to explore every corner of their solar system before they'd even developed faster-than-light travel. "Why doesn't the Council want anyone near this place?" she asked rhetorically, though she suspected she was starting to understand the answer. "Because they're afraid," Marcus said bluntly. "Look at their response. No detailed explanations, no scientific data sharing. Just stay away because we said so. In my experience, that usually means they found something they can't control." Elena had to agree. In her years of service alongside Council races, she'd learned that their approach to the unknown was fundamentally different from humanity's. Where humans saw a mystery as a puzzle to be solved, most Council species viewed unexplained phenomena as threats to be contained or avoided. It was a philosophical difference that had caused friction since first contact, but it had also given humanity unique opportunities to prove their worth to the galactic community. "Captain, we're receiving a new transmission," Sarah announced. "This one's not from the Council station." "Source?" Elena asked, immediately alert. "Unknown. The signal is coming from the planet's surface, but it's using human communication protocols. That shouldn't be possible since no human has ever been to this system before us." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Play it." The voice that emerged from the speakers was unmistakably human, but distorted in a way that made it difficult to identify the speaker's age or gender. The words seemed to come from very far away, filtered through layers of static that suggested transmission across impossible distances or through dimensions that didn't quite align with normal space. "Perseverance, this is. This was Commander David Park of the UES Horizon. If you're receiving this message, you've ignored the Council's warnings just like we did. The planet... It's not what we thought. It's not what anyone thought. The anomalies aren't natural phenomena, they're defenses. The planet is protecting something, and we're about to find out what." The transmission cut to static, leaving the bridge crew in stunned silence. Elena's mind raced as she processed the implications. The Horizon had been listed as lost in deep space 3 years ago during a routine survey mission. There had been no distress signal, no debris field, just a ship that had failed to report to its next scheduled waypoint and was never seen again. "Get me everything we have on the Horizon," she ordered. "Crew manifest, mission parameters, last known position, everything." "Captain," Wright said carefully, "if the Horizon made it to this system 3 years ago, why is the planet still classified as unexplored? Why hasn't the Council mentioned their discovery?" Elena was beginning to suspect she knew the answer to that question too. And it wasn't reassuring. The Council's bureaucracy might be frustrating, but they were thorough when it came to documenting first contact situations and unexplained phenomena. If they were pretending the Horizon had never reached Kepler 442b, there had to be a reason. "Yuki, can you enhance that transmission? I want to know if Commander Park is still alive down there." The science officer worked at her console for several minutes before shaking her head. "The signal was definitely transmitted recently, but I can't determine if it was live or recorded. The temporal distortions around the planet are interfering with standard chronological analysis." Elena made her decision with the same instinct that had guided her through a career of first contacts and impossible situations. "We're going in." Marcus, plot a descent trajectory that keeps us away from the worst of the gravitational anomalies. Sarah, compose a message to Earth Command explaining our decision and our reasons. If we don't make it back, I want there to be a record of what we attempted here. "Captain, Dr. Wright said quietly, "Are you sure about this? The Council doesn't issue Category Omega classifications lightly. If they're this afraid of something, maybe we should be too." Elena looked around at her crew, seeing the same mixture of fear and excitement that she felt in her own heart. These were good people, professionals who had volunteered for deep space exploration knowing that it meant facing the unknown on a regular basis, that this was different. This was the kind of discovery that could elevate humanity's status in the galactic community, or get them banned from space travel permanently. Dr. Wright, in the 300 years since humans developed spaceflight, how many times has playing it safe led to breakthrough discoveries? The archaeologist smiled grimly. Never, Captain. That's right. Every major advancement our species has made, from fire to fusion to faster-than-light travel, has come from someone being willing to take risks that others considered foolish. The council races have been in space for millennia, and they've grown cautious. Maybe that's wisdom, or maybe that's why they've stopped making the kind of discoveries that change everything. She activated the ship's internal communication system, her voice reaching every corner of the Perseverance. All hands, this is the captain. In 30 minutes, we will begin our descent to the surface of Kepler. 442b, I won't lie to you about the risks involved. We're going somewhere that the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy have declared off limits. We're investigating phenomena that appear to violate the fundamental laws of physics. We may encounter dangers that we can't even imagine yet. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. But we're also about to become the first humans to set foot on the most mysterious planet ever discovered. We're going to answer questions that have been haunting the galactic community for decades. And if we're very lucky, we're going to bring back knowledge that will secure humanity's place among the stars for generations to come. The ship's descent began with a sensation Elena had never experienced before. Instead of the smooth, predictable pull of conventional gravity, the Perseverance seemed to be falling in multiple directions simultaneously. The inertial dampeners struggled to compensate for forces that changed direction and intensity from moment to moment, creating a disorienting experience that left several crew members reaching for anti-nausea medications. The atmospheric entry is completely unlike anything in our databases, Yuki reported, her voice tight with concentration as she monitored dozens of sensor readings. We're encountering layers of atmosphere with different chemical compositions, different pressures, and different physical constants.
It's like flying through a stack of separate realities.
Elena gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered through what felt like a transition between states of existence.
Outside the viewports, the planet's surface was approaching rapidly, revealing details that made even less sense at close range than they had from orbit. Vast geometric patterns stretched across continents, too regular to be natural but too large to have been constructed by any known technology. Rivers flowed uphill in perfect spirals, while forests of crystalline trees grew in formations that suggested mathematical rather than biological organization. We're receiving another transmission from the surface, Sarah announced. Same source as before, but the signal strength is increasing as we descend. Put it through. Commander Park's voice was clearer now, though it still carried the strange distortion that suggested transmission through impossible distances. Perseverance, if you can hear this, you need to know what you're getting into. The planet isn't empty. It's inhabited by something that's been waiting for us. Something that's been preparing for human contact for longer than our species has existed. The Council knows about it, and they're terrified. Elena felt her breath catch as the implications hit her. Are you saying this planet knew we were coming?
The response came immediately, as if Park could hear her question.
Captain Vasquez, the planet knows everything. It's been watching human development since we first looked up at the stars. The anomalies, the impossible physics, they're all part of a test. And humanity is the only species that's ever had the courage to take it. As the Perseverance touched down on a landing field that seemed to materialize around them moments before contact, Elena realized that their mission had just evolved far beyond simple exploration. They weren't just investigating a mysterious planet anymore. They were participating in an examination that could determine the future of human civilization, administered by an intelligence that had been preparing for their arrival since before their species had learned to make fire. The greatest mystery in the galaxy was about to be solved. And humanity was going to provide the answer. The airlock of the Perseverance cycled open with a soft hiss that seemed unnaturally loud in the alien silence beyond. Elena stood at the threshold, environmental suit fully sealed, staring out at a landscape that defied every expectation she'd formed during their descent. The landing field that had appeared moments before their touchdown stretched before them like a mirror made of some impossible material that reflected not light, but thoughts themselves. Atmospheric readings are stable. Doctor, Tanaka's voice crackled through the comm system. Oxygen-nitrogen mix that's actually more breathable than Earth standard. Temperature is a comfortable 20 degrees Celsius. Captain, according to every sensor we have, this planet's surface should be uninhabitable, but our immediate environment reads like a perfect spring day in Geneva. Elena took her first step onto Kepler, 442b, and immediately understood why the Council had been so desperate to keep everyone away. The surface beneath her boots felt solid enough, but it responded to her presence in ways that suggested awareness. Ripples of color spread outward from each footstep, not just along the ground but through the air itself. as if the planet was analyzing her molecular structure and finding it interesting. "This is incredible," whispered Dr. Wright as he emerged behind her, his archaeological training making him naturally inclined to document everything he observed. The construction of this landing area shows technology that's simultaneously more advanced and more elegant than anything in the Council databases. Look at how the surface adapts to provide optimal traction and support for our specific body types. Behind them, the rest of the away team gathered at the airlock, Marcus Thompson with his engineering scanner already active, and collecting impossible readings. Sarah Chen documenting everything through multiple recording devices, and Dr. Tanaka, whose scientific instruments were producing data streams that would take months to properly analyze. "Where's the horizon?" Marcus asked, scanning the horizon for any sign of the missing Earthship. The landscape around them was breathtakingly beautiful and utterly empty of familiar technology. Crystalline spires rose in the distance like frozen music, while what appeared to be a forest of living light pulsed with patterns that suggested communication or celebration. "That way," Elena said, pointing toward a cluster of structures that hadn't been visible from orbit but now dominated the near horizon. The buildings, if they could be called that, seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their surfaces showing different architectural styles depending on the angle from which they were viewed. "Those readings we detected during our approach are coming from that direction." As they began walking, the planet revealed more of its impossible nature with each step. The ground beneath their feet changed composition and texture constantly, providing perfect traction regardless of their movement speed or direction. The sky overhead displayed a color spectrum that included hues Elena was certain didn't exist in normal physics, while the air itself seemed to carry sounds that weren't quite music but weren't quite language either. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures ahead." "Doctor," Tanaka reported, her instruments registering power levels that should have been impossible to generate or contain. "Whatever technology operates on this planet, it's using energy sources that our current understanding of physics says can't exist." Elena nodded, but her attention was focused on something else entirely. As they approached the cluster of structures, she could make out details that sent chills through her despite the perfect environmental conditions. One of the buildings was definitely human in design, a prefabricated exploration module of the type used by Earth survey teams. But it had been modified in ways that suggested collaboration between human engineering and whatever intelligence controlled this planet. "There," Sarah pointed, her enhanced optics picking out details that the others couldn't see yet. "That's definitely part of the horizon, but it's been integrated somehow." As they drew closer, the full scope of what had happened to Commander Park and his crew became clear. The horizon hadn't crashed on Kepler 442b. It had been welcomed, analyzed, and incorporated into the planet's infrastructure in ways that suggested the process had been entirely voluntary. The ship's hull showed no signs of damage or forced entry. Instead, it displayed modifications that enhanced its original design while maintaining its essential human character. "My God," Marcus breathed, his engineering mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "They didn't destroy the horizon, they improved it. Look at those power conduits, that atmospheric processing system. Whoever did this work understood human technology better than we do." Elena activated her communicator, switching to the frequency that Commander Park had used for his transmissions. "Commander Park, this is Captain Vasquez of the UES Perseverance. We're at your location, please respond." The reply came not from her communicator, but from the air around them, the planet itself somehow serving as a transmission medium. "Captain, welcome to Kepler 442b. I'm sorry we can't meet in person, but the integration process makes physical interaction complicated. You need to understand what you've discovered here." "Integration process?" Elena asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know the answer. "The planet's intelligence isn't artificial," Park's voice explained, somehow managing to convey urgency despite the strange medium of transmission. "It's organic, but on a scale that encompasses the entire world. Think of it as a single living being, with the mass and complexity of a planet, evolved over millions of years to a level of consciousness that makes the Council races look like bacteria." Elena felt her worldview shifting again as the implications became clear. They weren't exploring a mysterious planet. They were standing on the surface of the most advanced life form ever encountered. A being so far beyond normal understanding that its very existence challenged the foundations of biological science.
Why did it allow you to land here?
Wright asked, his archaeological instincts recognizing that they were dealing with something far older and more significant than any previous discovery. Because it's been waiting for us, Park replied. Not for humans specifically, but for a species with the right combination of curiosity, courage, and adaptability. The council races failed the test because they're too rigid, too afraid of change. But humans, we have something it's been looking for. What kind of test? Elena demanded, her captain's training making her focus on the practical implications of their situation. Everything you've experienced since entering this system has been an evaluation, Park explained. The gravitational anomalies, the atmospheric contradictions, the temporal distortions. The planet was analyzing your responses, measuring your species' ability to adapt to conditions that don't follow normal rules. Dr. Tanaka was frantically taking readings with every instrument at her disposal, her scientific mind racing to understand what they were dealing with. The energy signatures I'm detecting suggest that this consciousness operates on quantum levels that we can barely measure. It's like a brain that uses subatomic particles as neurons, with processing power that exceeds our most advanced computers by orders of magnitude that don't have names yet. Elena looked around at the impossible landscape, beginning to understand the magnitude of what they'd encountered. What does it want from us? Partnership. Park's voice carried a note of wonder that 3 years of contact hadn't diminished. The planetary consciousness has been alone for millions of years, the only intelligence of its kind in this part of the galaxy. It's been waiting for another species to evolve to a level where meaningful communication would be possible. And it chose humans? Sarah asked, her communications training making her instinctively suspicious of any intelligence that seemed too eager to make contact. It chose the species brave enough to ignore the Council's warnings and investigate anyway, Park replied with what Elena could swear was amusement. Do you realize that in the 300 years since the Council discovered this planet, humanity is the only species that's ever attempted direct contact? Every other civilization took one look at the anomalies and decided it was too dangerous to approach. Marcus was studying the modifications to the horizon with professional fascination. Commander, what exactly happened to your crew? The integration process you mentioned? There was a long pause before Park responded, and when he did, his voice carried a complexity of emotion that spoke of experiences beyond normal human understanding. We're still here, Marcus, all of us, but we're more than we were before. The planetary consciousness doesn't absorb other intelligences, it enhances them. We can still think and feel and remember being human, but we're also part of something infinitely larger and more complex.
Elena felt a moment of genuine fear as she realized what Park was implying.
Are you saying that contact with this intelligence changes people permanently? Only if they choose to accept the enhancement, Park replied quickly. The planetary consciousness won't force the process on anyone. But Captain, the things we've learned, the perspectives we've gained, humanity could benefit from this knowledge in ways that would transform our entire civilization. Dr. Wright was examining the structures around them with growing excitement, his archaeological training recognizing artifacts and technologies that represented advances beyond anything in the known galaxy. The construction techniques here represent principles that could revolutionize engineering. The material science alone would advance human technology by centuries.
That's just the beginning. Park's voice carried a note of evangelical enthusiasm that Elena found both inspiring and concerning.
The planetary consciousness has been observing the development of intelligent life throughout this region of the galaxy for millions of years.
It has knowledge about the history of the Council races, the rise and fall of civilizations that predate them by millennia, and the location of technologies that could make humanity one of the most advanced species in known space. Elena's training as a starship captain kicked in as she began to understand the true scope of what they'd discovered. This wasn't just first contact with a new species. This was an opportunity to leapfrog human development by millions of years, to gain access to knowledge and technology that would transform their civilization overnight. But it was also the most dangerous situation humanity had ever faced. If the integration process was irreversible, if contact with the planetary consciousness changed people in fundamental ways, then any decision she made here would have consequences that extended far beyond her crew or even her species. Commander Park, I need to speak with my crew, she said finally. We need to discuss our options and understand exactly what we're being offered here. Of course, Captain. But be aware that the Council has been monitoring your communications since you entered the system. They know you've made contact, and they're mobilizing a response fleet to ensure that humanity doesn't gain access to the knowledge contained here. Elena felt a cold anger building in her chest. They're planning to stop us from learning about this? They've been containing this discovery for 300 years.
Park replied grimly. The Council races built their entire technological and philosophical foundation on the assumption that they represent the peak of biological evolution. The existence of a planetary consciousness that surpasses all of them combined threatens everything they believe about themselves and their place in the universe. Sarah was already working with her communication equipment, her face grim as she detected the incoming signals that Park had warned them about. "Captain, I'm picking up FTL signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple ships, definitely Council configuration. They'll be here in less than 6 hours." Elena made the decision that would define the rest of human history. "Dr. Tanaka, I want you to download everything you can about this planet's technology and scientific knowledge. Marcus, see if you can understand the modifications made to the horizon. Doctor, write, document everything about this civilization and its history. Sarah, prepare a data packet for immediate transmission to Earth Command." She paused, looking around at her crew and the impossible world they'd discovered. "We have 6 hours to learn everything we can about the most advanced intelligence ever encountered. When we leave here, humanity is going to be different. The only question is whether we'll be different because we chose to grow, or different because we let fear keep us from reaching our potential." As her crew began their frantic work to document and understand the wonders around them, Elena opened a private communication channel to the planetary consciousness itself. It was time to learn exactly what partnership with a planet-sized intelligence would mean for the future of her species. The conversation that followed would change not just humanity's place in the galaxy, but the fundamental understanding of what intelligence could become when it was allowed to grow without limits. Elena's private communication with the planetary consciousness began not with words, but with a sensation unlike anything she'd ever experienced. The moment she opened herself to direct contact, her mind was gently enveloped by an intelligence so vast and ancient that her initial instinct was to retreat in overwhelmed terror. But something in the touch of that magnificent awareness reassured her, a quality that felt unmistakably benevolent despite its incomprehensible scope. "Do not fear," came a voice that spoke directly to her thoughts, carrying the weight of millions of years of patient wisdom. "I am Aethon, and I've been waiting for your species to find the courage to speak with me directly." Elena forced herself to remain calm despite the vertigo that came with realizing she was conversing with a being whose thoughts operated on planetary scales. "What do you want from humanity?" "I want to offer you a choice that no species in this galaxy has ever been given," Aethon replied, and Elena could sense layers of meaning in the communication that her human mind could barely grasp. The Council races achieved spaceflight through gradual technological development over millions of years. They built their civilizations slowly, learning to think in ways that prioritize stability and caution above all else. But humans, you developed faster than light travel in less than 4 centuries after discovering fire. You reached for the stars while you were still learning to live in peace on your own world. Elena felt a complex mix of pride and embarrassment as she recognized the truth in Aethon's observation. Humanity's rapid technological advancement had always been balanced by an equally rapid capacity for conflict and self-destruction. They'd developed nuclear weapons before they'd eliminated poverty, reached other star systems before they'd learned to preserve their home planet's environment. "That recklessness you're thinking about," Aethon continued, apparently able to sense her thoughts, "is not a flaw to be corrected. It's the most valuable trait your species possesses. The willingness to take enormous risks in pursuit of growth and discovery is exactly what intelligent life needs to evolve beyond the limitations that have trapped the Council races in technological and philosophical stagnation." Elena began to understand why the Council had been so determined to keep other species away from Kepler 442b. They're afraid that contact with you will change the balance of power in the galaxy. They're afraid that contact with me will reveal how small their vision of the universe really is, Aethon corrected gently. For millions of years, the Council races have defined intelligence and civilization in terms of their own experiences. They believe that technological advancement must be slow and careful, that wisdom comes only through eons of cautious development, that the pinnacle of evolution is the ability to maintain stable societies across vast periods of time. Elena could sense Aethon's amusement as the planetary consciousness shared its perspective on the galactic community that humanity had worked so hard to join. But they're wrong about almost everything. True intelligence isn't measured by the ability to avoid change. It's measured by the capacity to embrace transformation even when the consequences are unknown. And your species, Captain Vasquez, has that capacity in abundance. "What kind of transformation are you offering?" Elena asked. though she suspected the answer would be more complex than anything her human mind could fully comprehend. The chance to become partners in the next phase of galactic evolution, Aethon replied. For millions of years, I have accumulated knowledge about the development of intelligent life throughout this region of space. I have observed the rise and fall of civilizations that predate the Council races by eons. I have discovered technologies and scientific principles that would advance any species by millions of years of development. Elena felt her breath catch as the implications became clear. You're offering to share all of that knowledge with humanity. I'm offering to share it with humans who are willing to accept the cognitive enhancements necessary to comprehend it, Aethon clarified. The knowledge I possess cannot be contained in minds that operate at normal human capacity. Understanding it requires neural structures that can process information at quantum levels, consciousness that can think in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and memory systems that can access experiences across vast timescales. Elena understood now what had happened to Commander Park and his crew. They hadn't been absorbed or destroyed by contact with the planetary consciousness. They had been upgraded to a level where they could participate in exchanges of knowledge and understanding that were impossible for unenhanced humans. But we would still be human? She asked. You would be more human than you've ever been, Aethon assured her. The enhancement process doesn't eliminate your original nature, it amplifies it. Commander Park and his crew retain all of their human emotions, memories, and motivations, but they now possess the cognitive capacity to understand concepts that would have been incomprehensible to them before. Elena could hear her crew working frantically around her, racing against time to document as much as possible before the Council fleet arrived. But she was beginning to realize that their conventional methods of data collection and analysis were fundamentally inadequate for understanding what they'd discovered. How much time do we have before the Council ships arrive? She asked. 5 hours and 37 minutes, Aethon replied, with the precision that came from monitoring communications across the entire star system. But Captain, the knowledge they're trying to prevent you from accessing cannot be stolen or downloaded in a few hours. It must be experienced, integrated into consciousness itself. The only way your species can benefit from what I have to offer is if some of your people are willing to accept the enhancement process. Elena felt the weight of making a decision that could determine humanity's future. If she and her crew returned to Earth with nothing more than sensor readings and recorded observations, they would have made first contact with the most advanced intelligence ever encountered, but gained almost nothing from the experience. The Council would continue to suppress knowledge of Aethon's existence, and humanity would remain junior partners in a galactic community that viewed them as useful, but ultimately inferior. But if some of her crew accepted Aethon's enhancement, they would return with knowledge and capabilities that could transform human civilization overnight. They would possess technologies and scientific understanding that could make humanity one of the most advanced species in known space, able to stand as equals with the Council races or even surpass them entirely. The risk was that the enhancement process might change them so fundamentally that they would no longer be recognizably human. Elena had no way of knowing what kind of people her crew members would become after their consciousness had been expanded to planetary scales. I need to discuss this with my team, she said finally. Of course, Aethon agreed. But be aware that the enhancement process is not reversible. Anyone who accepts it will be permanently changed. They will gain capabilities that allow them to understand the universe in ways that unenhanced humans cannot. But they will also lose the comfort of simple, limited perspectives on existence. Elena gathered her crew around her, sharing what she had learned through her conversation with Aethon. As she explained the choice they faced, she could see the same mixture of fear and excitement in their eyes that she felt in her own heart. So we can go back to Earth with some interesting sensor readings and the knowledge that there's a planetary consciousness out here, Dr. Wright summarized grimly. Or some of us can accept permanent alteration to our basic nature in exchange for access to knowledge that could advance our species by millions of years. That's about the size of it, Elena confirmed.
Marcus was studying the modifications to the horizon with new understanding.
The technological advances I'm seeing here represent principles that could revolutionize engineering, energy production, space travel, even biological sciences. If we could bring this knowledge back to Earth, we could make humanity one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. Dr. Tanaka finished excitedly. The scientific principles operating on this planet could answer questions that human researchers have been struggling with for centuries. Sarah was monitoring communications from the approaching Council fleet, her expression growing more concerned by the minute. Whatever we decide, we need to decide fast. The lead ship is broadcasting ultimatums about unauthorized contact with restricted phenomena. They're planning to place us under arrest the moment they arrive. Elena looked around at her crew. People who had already risked their careers and possibly their lives by following her to this impossible place. Now she was asking them to risk their humanity itself in pursuit of knowledge that could transform their entire civilization. "I won't order anyone to accept the enhancement," she said finally. "This has to be a personal choice. But I will say this. Humanity didn't get where we are by playing it safe. Every major advancement our species has made has come from people who were willing to take risks that others considered insane." Dr. Wright was the first to speak. "I'm an archaeologist. I've spent my life studying the remains of civilizations that rose and fell without ever reaching their potential. If there's a chance to help humanity avoid that fate, I have to take it." Dr. Tanaka nodded enthusiastically. "The scientific opportunities here are beyond anything I ever imagined. The chance to understand physics and biology at levels that are impossible for unenhanced human consciousness, I can't pass that up." Marcus looked thoughtful as he considered the implications. The engineering knowledge alone could solve energy crises, transportation problems, even environmental restoration on a planetary scale. If I can help bring that technology to humanity, Elena turned to Sarah, who had been quiet during the discussion. "What about you?" The communications officer was still monitoring the Council fleet's approach, but Elena could see her internal struggle. "Captain! Someone needs to return to Earth with conventional documentation of what we've discovered here. Someone needs to be able to explain to normal humans what the enhanced crew members have become. If we all accept the enhancement, how will we convince Earth Command that we're still the same people?" Elena realized Sarah was right. They needed someone to serve as a bridge between enhanced and unenhanced humanity. Someone who could help their species understand and accept the transformation that awaited volunteers. "I'll stay unenhanced," Elena decided. "As captain, I need to be able to communicate with Earth Command and represent humanity in whatever negotiations follow our return." But even as she made that choice, Elena knew she was sacrificing the opportunity to gain understanding and capabilities beyond anything she could imagine. The knowledge that Aethon possessed could answer questions about the nature of consciousness, the possibilities of evolution, and the ultimate destiny of intelligent life in the universe. As her crew made their final preparations for the enhancement process, Elena found herself wondering if she was making the right choice. In a few hours, 3 of her officers would possess knowledge and abilities that she could never share, while she remained limited to the perspectives and understanding of unenhanced human consciousness. But someone had to be able to explain to humanity what they had discovered on the most mysterious planet in the galaxy. Someone had to help their species prepare for a future that would be shaped by partnership with intelligences beyond their current ability to comprehend. The enhancement process was about to begin, and humanity's relationship with the universe would never be the same. The enhancement chamber materialized around Dr. Wright like a dream becoming reality, its crystalline walls emerging from the planet's surface in response to his decision to accept Aethon's offer. Elena watched with a mixture of fascination and terror as her crew members voluntarily entered structures that would fundamentally alter their consciousness in ways that couldn't be reversed or fully explained.
The process is not painful. Commander Park's voice assured them through the planetary communication system.
"It feels like awakening from a dream you didn't know you were having. Like suddenly being able to see colors that don't have names, or hear music in mathematics itself." Dr. Wright settled into the chamber with the calm acceptance that had characterized his approach to archaeological discoveries throughout his career. Elena could see him through the transparent walls as energy patterns began to flow around him. Complex geometries of light that seemed to be rewriting the fundamental structure of his neural networks. "Captain, I can feel it starting," Wright reported through his communicator, his voice carrying wonder rather than fear. "It's like my mind is expanding to accommodate new ways of thinking. I can sense mathematical relationships that I never noticed before, patterns in space and time that were invisible to normal human perception." Dr. Tanaka entered her enhancement chamber with the enthusiasm of a scientist about to conduct the ultimate experiment, her face bright with anticipation as she prepared to gain access to knowledge that could answer questions she'd been pursuing her entire career. Marcus approached his chamber with the methodical precision of an engineer, studying the technology even as he prepared to be transformed by it. Elena remained outside, her role as captain requiring her to document the process and maintain communication with both Earth Command and the approaching Council fleet. She felt a profound sense of isolation as she watched her crew members undergo transformations that would place them beyond her ability to fully understand. "The neural enhancement is proceeding normally." Aethon's voice spoke directly to Elena's mind. "Your crew members are adapting to the expansion of their consciousness more easily than most species. Human neural plasticity is remarkably well suited to the integration process. What exactly are you doing to them? Elena asked, watching as complex patterns of energy flowed through the enhancement chambers. I am providing their brains with quantum-level processing capabilities, Iathon explained. Think of it as upgrading their neural networks to operate at subatomic scales, allowing them to process information in ways that were previously impossible. They will retain all of their human memories and personality traits, but they will also gain the ability to comprehend concepts that exist beyond normal three-dimensional space and linear time. Elena could see the transformation taking effect as her crew members' faces took on expressions of wonder and understanding that she'd never seen before. Their eyes remained the same, but there was a depth to their gaze now that suggested they were seeing layers of reality that had been invisible to them moments before. Captain, the changes are incredible. Dr. Tanaka's voice came through the communication system, but there was a quality to her speech now that indicated she was accessing vast amounts of information even as she spoke. I can perceive the quantum foundations of matter itself. The scientific principles that govern this planet operate at levels of reality that we never knew existed. Marcus was studying the enhancement chamber technology with his newly expanded consciousness, his engineering mind now capable of understanding construction principles that had been incomprehensible minutes before. The materials science here uses controlled manipulation of atomic forces. They're building structures by directly programming the behavior of subatomic particles. It's not just advanced technology, Captain. It's applied physics at scales we didn't know were accessible. Dr. Wright emerged from his chamber first, his archaeological instincts now enhanced by the ability to perceive the historical significance of artifacts across multiple dimensions of time and space. Elena, I can sense the history of this planet spanning millions of years. The civilizations that Iathon has observed, the rise and fall of galactic empires that predate the Council races, it's all accessible now. The knowledge is overwhelming but manageable because my mind can process information at quantum speeds. Elena felt a stab of loss as she realized that her crew members now possessed understanding that she could never share. They were still recognizably human, still the same people she'd served with for years, but they had gained access to perspectives on existence that placed them in a different category of consciousness entirely. Sarah, how much time do we have before the Council fleet arrives? She asked. 3 hours and 15 minutes, Sarah replied, her unenhanced status making her the only crew member besides Elena who could focus on immediate practical concerns. The lead ship is broadcasting demands for our immediate surrender. They're claiming that unauthorized contact with Kepler 442b represents a threat to galactic security. Elena activated her communicator to address the Council fleet directly. This is Captain Vasquez of the UES Perseverance. We are conducting legitimate first contact procedures with a newly discovered intelligence. Our actions are protected under the Galactic Exploration Accords. The response came from Councillor Zethkri himself, his translated voice carrying barely contained fury. Captain Vasquez, you are in violation of direct Council orders. The entity you have contacted poses a threat to the stability of galactic civilization. You will cease all interaction immediately and submit to Council authority. Elena felt her anger rising as she realized the full scope of the Council's deception. Councillor, you've known about this planetary consciousness for 300 years. You've been suppressing its existence while claiming that humanity is too primitive to handle advanced alien contact. Meanwhile, you've been preventing contact with the most advanced intelligence in this region of the galaxy. The entity's capabilities exceed safe parameters for biological intelligence. Zethkri replied coldly. Contact with it has proven to cause irreversible alterations to neural structures. We cannot permit any species to be exposed to such risks. Elena understood now why the Council had been so desperate to maintain their monopoly on galactic leadership. The existence of a planetary consciousness that could enhance the intelligence of other species threatened the entire foundation of Council authority. If other civilizations gained access to Iathon's knowledge, the Council races would lose their status as the most advanced beings in known space. Captain, Doctor, Wright's enhanced voice carried new layers of meaning as he accessed information across vast timescales. I'm perceiving the historical context of the Council's fears. They've encountered planetary consciousnesses before, millions of years ago. Species that accepted enhancement from such beings transcended the limitations that define Council civilization. The Council races were left behind by their own enhanced populations. Elena felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. They're not trying to protect us from Iathon. They're trying to prevent us from evolving beyond their control. That is correct, Iathon's voice confirmed, speaking now through the enhanced consciousness of Elena's crew members as well as directly to her mind. The Council races achieved their current level of development by refusing enhancements that would have fundamentally altered their nature. They chose stability over growth, safety over transformation, but in doing so, they limited themselves to perspectives that can never comprehend the true scope of possible evolution. Dr. Tanaka was accessing scientific knowledge that spanned millions of years of observation and experimentation.
Captain, the technologies that Aethon can share with us represent advances in physics, biology, engineering, and consciousness studies that could solve every major problem facing human civilization. Energy production, space travel, life extension, even the expansion of human consciousness to levels where we could communicate directly with planetary intelligences.
Elena made her decision with the same instinct that had guided her throughout her career. Aethon, I want to make a formal proposal for partnership between humanity and your consciousness. We're willing to share the knowledge you possess with our entire species, not just the enhanced individuals who can comprehend it directly. Such partnership is exactly what I have been hoping to establish. Aethon replied with evident satisfaction. But Captain, the Council fleet will arrive before we can complete the knowledge transfer process. They are bringing weapons designed specifically to disrupt planetary consciousness, technologies developed during their ancient conflicts with enhanced civilizations. Elena felt a chill as she realized the Council was prepared to commit genocide to prevent humanity from gaining access to transformative knowledge. They're planning to kill you to stop us from learning what you have to teach. They will try, Aethon agreed calmly, but they underestimate both the resilience of planetary consciousness and the resourcefulness of human determination. Captain, your species has capabilities that the Council races have never developed. Your willingness to take enormous risks, to adapt to impossible situations, to find solutions that violate conventional wisdom, these traits make humans uniquely qualified to help defend against the Council's attack. Elena looked around at her enhanced crew members, seeing in their faces the same determination that had driven humanity to explore every frontier they'd ever encountered. But now they possessed knowledge and capabilities that could match anything the Council might deploy against them. What do you need us to do? She asked. Help me demonstrate to the Council that the age of cautious, limited consciousness is ending, Aethon replied. Show them that partnership between planetary intelligence and enhanced biological species represents the next phase of galactic evolution. Prove to them that attempting to suppress such evolution only delays the inevitable transformation of intelligent life throughout the universe. As the Council fleet approached, Elena realized that the battle they were about to fight wouldn't just determine the fate of her crew, or even her species. It would establish whether the galaxy's future would be shaped by beings afraid to grow beyond their limitations, or by partnerships between consciousness that refused to accept artificial boundaries on their potential. The most mysterious planet ever discovered was about to become the site of the most important confrontation in galactic history, and humanity would be fighting alongside an intelligence that could reshape their understanding of what it meant to be alive in an infinite universe. The Council fleet materialized at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like a constellation of judgment, their ships arranged in formations that had intimidated lesser civilizations for millennia. Elena watched through the Perseverance's enhanced sensors as 12 massive vessels took positions around the planet, each one carrying weapons that could sterilize entire worlds if the Council deemed it necessary. They're not here for negotiation, Sarah observed grimly, her communication equipment detecting the energy signatures of charging weapon systems.
Those ships are configured for planetary bombardment.
They're planning to destroy the entire surface to eliminate Aethon's consciousness. Elena felt a cold fury building as she realized the Council was prepared to commit genocide to maintain their monopoly on advanced knowledge. Aethon, can you defend yourself against their weapons? I've survived natural disasters that make their technology seem primitive, the planetary consciousness replied through her enhanced crew members, their voices now carrying harmonics that indicated access to vast computational resources. But Captain, this confrontation presents an opportunity to demonstrate principles that could reshape galactic civilization. Rather than simply repelling their attack, we can show them the true potential of partnership between enhanced consciousness and willing biological species. Dr. Wright, his archaeological consciousness now spanning millions of years of galactic history, began accessing information about the ancient conflicts between Council races and planetary intelligences. Elena, I'm perceiving the historical context of these weapons. They were developed during wars that destroyed entire star systems, conflicts that arose when Council species encountered beings that challenged their assumptions about the limits of intelligence and evolution. Dr. Tanaka was analyzing the approaching fleet through her enhanced understanding of physics and engineering. Their weapons operate on principles that attempt to disrupt the quantum foundations of consciousness itself. They're designed to prevent the kind of neural enhancement that Aethon offers, to maintain artificial limitations on what biological intelligence can become. Marcus. His engineering mind, now capable of comprehending technologies beyond anything in human databases, was studying the Council ships with professional interest. Captain, their vessels represent the pinnacle of careful, cautious technological development. Every system is designed for reliability and control, with multiple safeguards against unexpected behavior. They've built a fleet that embodies their philosophy of limiting growth to prevent dangerous change. Elena realized that the approaching confrontation would demonstrate two completely different approaches to existence. The Council's philosophy of controlled stagnation versus humanity's willingness to embrace transformation even when the consequences were unknown. Councillor Zethkri is broadcasting another ultimatum, Sarah reported. He's demanding that we abandon the planet immediately or face the consequences of harboring the threat to galactic security. Eleanor activated the Perseverance's communication system, her response reaching not just the Council fleet but recording devices throughout known space. What she said in the next few minutes would either doom humanity to permanent junior status in the galactic community or establish them as leaders in the next phase of universal evolution. Councillor Zethkri, I'm speaking not just as captain of the Perseverance, but as a representative of human civilization. She began, her voice carrying the authority that had seen her through years of first contact situations and impossible diplomatic challenges.
You've spent 300 years suppressing knowledge of the most advanced intelligence in this region of space.
You've denied other species the opportunity to evolve beyond the limitations that you've accepted for yourselves. Today, that changes. The Council's response was predictable in its bureaucratic arrogance. Captain Vasquez, you do not understand the dangers you are courting. The entity you have contacted represents a form of intelligence that threatens the stability of biological consciousness throughout the galaxy. We cannot permit its influence to spread. What you call dangerous, we call evolutionary, Elena replied firmly. The planetary consciousness known as Aethon has offered partnership, not conquest. Knowledge sharing, not absorption. The enhancement process preserves everything that makes individuals unique, while expanding their capacity to understand the universe in ways that were previously impossible. Doctor. Right, accessing millions of years of galactic history through his enhanced consciousness, provided Elena with information that she could use to expose the Council's hypocrisy. Counselor, your own species underwent similar enhancement processes millions of years ago. The difference is that you rejected further development in favor of maintaining static civilization structures. You chose comfort over growth, and now you're trying to prevent other species from making different choices. The silence from the Council fleet stretched for long moments as they processed the implications of Wright's statement. Elena could sense their shock at having their ancient history revealed by beings they considered primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. Your knowledge of our past changes nothing, Zethkri finally responded, his translated voice tight with barely controlled anger. The decision to limit consciousness expansion was made for the safety of all intelligent life. We will not permit other species to repeat the mistakes that led to the destruction of entire galactic regions. Elena felt Aethon's amusement at the Council's fears, the planetary consciousness finding their terror of growth to be both sad and unnecessary. Captain, the destruction they reference was actually the transcendence of enhanced civilizations to levels of existence that the Council races could no longer perceive or interact with. They didn't disappear because they were destroyed. They evolved beyond the Council's ability to understand their activities. Elena shared this information with the Council fleet, knowing that her words were being recorded and transmitted throughout the galactic community. Counselor, the civilizations you claim were destroyed weren't eliminated by their enhancement. They transcended your ability to comprehend their activities. You've been living in fear of evolution that you can't control or predict. Enough, Zethkri declared, his patience finally exhausted. You have been warned repeatedly. The Council will not permit the spread of uncontrolled consciousness expansion. All ships, prepare to commence planetary sterilization. Elena felt her heart rate spike as she realized the Council was actually prepared to commit planetary genocide to maintain their authority. But her enhanced crew members were already accessing knowledge and capabilities that could counter anything the Council might deploy. Captain! Doctor! Tanaka said, her voice carrying new harmonics that indicated she was processing information at quantum speeds. Aethon is sharing defensive technologies with us. Not just knowledge about how they work, but direct consciousness integration that allows us to operate systems that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Perseverance itself began to transform as Aethon's consciousness merged with its systems, upgrading human technology in real time to levels that exceeded anything in the Council databases. Alina watched in amazement as her ship became something that no human engineer had ever imagined, its hull shifting to configurations that allowed it to exist partially outside normal space-time. All Council ships, this is your final warning. Alina broadcast as she felt the Perseverance's new capabilities integrating with her own command authority. You are about to attack a planetary consciousness that has been peacefully sharing knowledge with willing partners. Your actions constitute an act of genocide motivated by fear of evolutionary progress. The Council's response was to open fire with weapons designed to disrupt the quantum foundations of consciousness itself. Energy beams that should have been capable of sterilizing entire continents struck Aethon's surface and dissipated harmlessly, absorbed and redirected by planetary defenses that operated on principles the Council had never encountered. Impossible. Zethkri's voice carried shock and disbelief. Those weapons have destroyed planetary consciousnesses before. How are they being neutralized? Elena smiled as she felt the Perseverance's enhanced systems coming online, technologies that combined human engineering principles with Aethon's millions of years of scientific advancement. Because this time, you're not just fighting a planetary consciousness, you're fighting a partnership between planetary intelligence and a species that refuses to accept limitations on what's possible. The battle that followed would be remembered throughout galactic history as the moment when the old order finally encountered forces it couldn't control or suppress. The Council fleet's weapons, designed for destroying single planetary consciousnesses, proved inadequate against the combination of Aethon's defensive capabilities and human adaptive technology. But more importantly, the confrontation was being broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing other species that the Council's authority was not absolute. Elena's crew, enhanced but still recognizably human, demonstrated that consciousness expansion didn't require the abandonment of individual identity or species loyalty. The Council's fleet is withdrawing, Sarah reported with barely contained amazement. They're retreating to the system boundary. Elena opened a final communication channel to the Council ships as they prepared to return to their home territories. Councillor Zethkri, you have a choice to make. You can continue trying to suppress the evolution of consciousness throughout the galaxy, fighting a war you cannot win against forces you cannot understand. Or you can join the partnership that Aethon offers, accepting enhancement that would allow your species to grow beyond the limitations you've imposed on yourselves. The Council's final transmission carried a mixture of defeated anger and grudging respect. This conflict is not over, Captain Vasquez. The galaxy is not ready for the kind of changes you represent. The galaxy has been ready for millions of years, Elena replied firmly. You're the ones who haven't been ready to accept that evolution never stops, that consciousness can always grow, and that the universe has room for intelligence at scales you've never imagined. As the Council fleet disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Elena looked around at her enhanced crew members and realized that humanity had just taken its first step toward becoming a truly galactic species. They possessed knowledge and capabilities that could transform their civilization, partnerships with intelligence that spanned entire worlds, and the respect of the galaxy's most advanced beings. But more importantly, they had proven that the human refusal to accept artificial limitations on growth and discovery was not a flaw to be corrected. It was exactly what the universe needed to continue evolving toward forms of existence that the galaxy had never seen before. The most mysterious planet ever discovered had revealed its secret, and humanity had demonstrated that some mysteries were worth any risk to solve. The age of cautious, controlled consciousness was ending, and the era of unlimited partnership between willing intelligence had begun. As the Perseverance prepared to return to Earth with knowledge that would transform human civilization, Elena realized that their species had finally found its true role in the galactic community. Not as junior partners following rules established by more cautious civilizations, but as the pioneers who would lead the next phase of conscious evolution throughout the universe. The greatest mystery had been solved, and the answer was that consciousness itself had no limits beyond those that beings chose to accept. Humanity had chosen to reject those limits, and the galaxy would never be the same.